What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time to officially give you my top 10 disappointing teams from the 2023 college football season. Yesterday, if you have not seen it yet, I did my top 10 surprise teams video, so if you have not seen who I picked to be the top 10 surprise teams from 2023, you can go back and watch that video if you have not seen it from yesterday. I'll leave it at the end of this video. So we're going to give you my top 10 disappointing teams from the 2023 season, and a lot of these teams I did have high expectations for them. Some of them probably I had them winning their conference championship, and some of them, just didn't make it to a bowl game. And, they had really good seasons last year. It's not really just about the records. It's really just about how, they're not competitive in all their games. But let's get right into this list. So we'll start from the bottom and work our way to the top as we get into my top 10 disappointing teams from the 2023 season. And also, this is going to be from the regular season, not from the bowl season and everything. So let's get right into this list. We'll start with number 10. Number 10 is South Carolina. So I didn't really know if I should put South Carolina on this list, but this is a team that went 8-5 last year. They went 5-7 in 2023. It's not really just about the, record for South Carolina. It's really just about the schedule that South Carolina played. They had to play Georgia. They had to play Tennessee. They also had to play Texas A&M. They also had to play Clemson out of the non-conference. They could have won that game and possibly, made it to a bowl game from there. But this South Carolina team overall was a very big disappointment. It looks like South Carolina was heading in the right direction after that really good season last year where they ended out the year with 2 top 10 wins. But now Clemson, now South Carolina, it seems like, they're really not going to be a program that can really head in the right direction. I think this is still a long way to go for South Carolina. A lot of people thought South Carolina would challenge Georgia, but I don't really think that was going to be the case. Now, they were up like 14-3 at the half against Georgia, but Georgia ended up pulling away in the second half and played really solid defense. Spencer Rattler is now gone. He's entered the NFL draft, so South Carolina is going to have to go with a new quarterback for next year. So we'll see if they turn things around in 2024. I think this is still a really good South Carolina team, but this year was just not their year. And they also had to play North Carolina in the non-conference, so this is my number 10 disappointment here is the South Carolina Gamecocks. Number 9 is Washington State. So Washington State went 7-6 last year. They went 5-7 this year, and this is a team that I had as my most surprised team in the first half of the year. I thought Washington State would be at least a dark horse contender in the Pac-12. I also had them in my top 25 like early in the year as well. But ever since that win against Wisconsin, it just wasn't really the best, rest of the season for this Washington State team. They also had that big win over Oregon State early in the year, and it looked like Washington State was going to be a very good team. But this Washington State team turned out to be a very big disappointment for the rest of the year, and it just seems like after that win over Wisconsin and Oregon State, this Washington State team just overall turned out to be a very big disappointment. So again, Washington State, not the season that they wanted. Again, this used to be the worst team in the Pac-12 over the years, but they really were starting to look like the best dark horse team in the Pac-12, but Washington State ends up having a very disappointing season, and again, they finished 5-7 in 2023. All right, number 8, I wasn't really sure to put at number 8. I was going to really go with Miami or Minnesota, but I decided to go with the Miami Hurricanes. Now, it's just not really about the overall record for Miami. This is about the inconsistency for Miami. I know they went 5-7 last year. They did turn things around, made it to a bowl game this year, but 7-5 is just not going to get it done. Miami, it kind of, started with that game against Georgia Tech. I talked about it yesterday. Miami was like 1-0 away from, winning that game against Georgia Tech. Then they fumbled the football and then obviously gave up a game-winning touchdown to Georgia Tech. So overall, a very big disappointment for this Miami team. Tyler Van Dyke has also entered the transfer portal. And it just seems like Miami is not the program that they used to be in the ACC. And, a couple years ago, like last year, I did pick them to win the Coastal Division. And then this year, I wasn't very high on Miami, but this is a team that just was overall very inconsistent, and that's the reason why they're on this list. The inconsistency from this Miami team. There were some games that they were very competitive in. They did beat Texas A&M in the non-conference, but there were also some games where they were just very inconsistent. They were very competitive against Florida State. I give them credit from there. They were very competitive against Louisville, but It seems like when they, have a close game and everything, they just lost all those close games. So I think that's the reason why Miami should be on this list, is because of those close losses. But Miami was a very competitive team, but they were sometimes inconsistent. So that's the reason why Miami is on this list. And again, 7-5 for a Miami football program is just not going to get it done. I know they didn't go to a bowl game last year. This definitely should be not a team that's on this list. But this is a team that went 7-5, and 7-5 is just not going to get it done. And also just the inconsistency from this Miami team. And also Tyler Van Dyke is now gone. He's transferred away, so we'll see where he ends up at. So Miami is number 8 here on this list. All right, number 7, Illinois. Illinois went 8-5 last year. They had a really good season. They went 5-7 this year. I kind of predicted Illinois to get to a bowl game this year. I wasn't very high on them, to make it to the Big Ten championship. It was kind of really like the Big Ten West is so hard to predict every single year, and it just seems like, it was really hard for me to kind of predict who I think was going to win the Big Ten West. But I did have Illinois at least going 7-5, making it to a bowl game. They went 8-4 last year in 2022 in the regular season, went 8-5 overall. But this team does miss out on a bowl game. They go 5-7. I think it was just because of the schedule. And, they had that game against Kansas early in the year, and that's kind of where this, disappointment started for Illinois. But they also had a pretty tough schedule, and they had to play Penn State out of the Big Ten East, and that was a very tough game there for them. So Illinois is number 7 on this list. Again, they went 8-5 last year and 5-7 this year. Let's now go to number 6. Number 6 is TCU. So TCU last year went 13-2. Remember, this is a team that went to the national championship last year, and then they went to the Big 12 championship as a undefeated team. They went 12-0 last year in the regular season. This year they went 5-7. This was definitely a very big step back, but I didn't really expect a really big step back from this TCU team. I thought they would at least still make it to a bowl game, probably go 7-5, maybe 6-6. But it really all started in that game against Colorado. If they would have won that game, TCU would have been probably sitting there as a bowl team, but they ended up losing to that Colorado team. Coming into this year, I thought TCU's defense would be very good, but offensively, I knew it was going to be a very big step back because Max Duggan was gone and everything. But this is a team, the reason why they're a big disappointment is just because this team went to the national championship last year. And again, they went 12-0 and 13-2 overall last year in 2022. So you have to put TCU on this list. They were a very big disappointment. And again, it all started in that Colorado game. They gave up so many points in that game. And that just overall turned out to be a very big disappointing year for TCU. So TCU, not a very good year in 2023. So they're number 6 here on this list. All right, how about number 5, Pittsburgh? Pitt went 9-4 last year in 2022. This year they went 3-9. They were almost one of the worst teams in the ACC this year. Maybe they were the worst team, perhaps, but, they did have that win over Louisville in the middle of the season. It looked like, Pittsburgh was going to probably turn things around after that Louisville win. Remember, they got off to a 1-4 start, and, after that win, it looks like they could probably, win out, maybe go 8-4, maybe 7-5 or 6-6. But overall, Pittsburgh was a very big disappointment. Maybe it's just because of all the talent that they lost at wide receiver. And, the defense wasn't very good. The offense wasn't very good for Pitt. So this was definitely a very big step back for Pittsburgh. I did have this team missing out on a bowl game. I did predict this team to go 5-7. But I did not expect them to go 3-9, to be honest. I thought they would at least get 5 or 6 wins. But overall, a very big disappointing season for the Panthers. Maybe they turn it around next year, but this is a team that won 9 games last year. And then a couple years ago, they won the ACC championship. So Pittsburgh, not a very good year this year in 2023. Again, they go 3-9 in 2023. They're number 5 on this list. All right, how about number 4, Baylor? So Baylor went 6-7 last year. This year they go 3-9. So they're kind of similar to Pittsburgh. This is a team that won the Big 12 a couple years ago, the Big 12 championship game a couple years ago against Oklahoma State. And ever since that Big 12 championship win, Baylor has not had a really good year, ever since 2022. They didn't have a really good year last year, in my opinion. I know they went to a bowl game last year, but overall to have a team that went 6-7 that won the Big 12 in 2021 and to have a 6-7 year, the next year and everything, that's still a very big disappointment. But this year was even more disappointing. I did predict Baylor to go like 8-4, but this team went 3-9 in 2023. And again, ever since that Big 12 championship win, Baylor has just not looked very good as a program, and they also have not looked really good in the last couple of years. So a very big disappointment from this Baylor team. And again, I did predict this team to be like maybe a dark horse contender in the Big 12. I did predict them to maybe go 8-4 perhaps in my preseason predictions and everything. So Baylor here at number 4 on this list. Again, a very big disappointment from this Baylor team. They finished 3-9 in 2023. All right, how about number 3? I don't think a lot of people saw this team come in here on this list. It's USC. USC was a very big disappointment this year in 2023. This is a team that went 11-3 last year, went to the Pac-12 championship, lost the Pac-12 championship, and then they ended up losing their New Year's Six Bowl last year to Tulane. I had a lot of expectations for this USC team. I did even predict them to go to the college football playoff. That was honestly a very big mistake there. USC, the reason why they're on this list, not just because of the record, but it's also the fact that their defense was terrible. They had the worst defense almost in all of college football, maybe also the worst in the country. But you look at this USC team, they had a high-powered offense going into this year. I wasn't very concerned about the offense and everything. I wasn't really concerned about Caleb Williams this year either. Caleb Williams, it looked like he had a pretty struggling year. When you come back, in your sophomore or actually your junior year after winning the Heisman Trophy from last year, it's kind of tough, to really repeat that. And that same thing happened with Alabama in 2022 when Bryce Young won the Heisman in 21. He just had a very tough season in 2022. And USC, again, their defense was terrible. That's the reason why they're on this list. And again, 7-5 is a very terrible season for this team, and also a very terrible record for a really high-powered program in USC. So now they're heading to the Big Ten next year, and you just got to wonder, will USC be really good next year? They got to get a defense going. They did fire their defensive coordinator, so they're going to get a new defensive coordinator. And Caleb Williams will not play in the Holiday Bowl against Louisville, so you won't see them there. He's now declaring for the NFL draft. But overall, this USC team was very close to being number 1 on my list, but I decided to put them here at number 3. And again, this is a team that won 11 games last year. This year, only 7. And again, the reason why they're on this list is just because of the defense. So USC here at number 3 on this countdown. Number 2 was Florida. So Florida goes 6-7 in 2022. This year they went 5-7. So it's not really a big surprise, to be honest. I wasn't really high on Florida this year, but I still predicted them to make it to a bowl game. I at least, predicted them to go 6-6. But this team does miss out on a bowl game this year. They're kind of similar to South Carolina. It just wasn't really about the overall record. It's really about the schedule that Florida had this year. The Florida schedule was very tough. They had to play Utah out of the Pac-12 in the non-conference. They also had to play, some of the top teams in the SEC. Like, for example, they obviously had to play Georgia and Tennessee. They ended up beating Tennessee. That was definitely their biggest win of the season. They lost to, Arkansas, one of the worst teams in the SEC this year. And then they also, were not very competitive against Kentucky. So there were some games where Florida was very competitive in, but they weren't very competitive in some other games. They had a chance to beat Florida State there in that game at the end of the rivalry weekend and everything. But second half, Florida just could not move the football in that Florida State defense. So overall, a very big disappointment from this Florida team. And again, if they didn't lose to Arkansas there at the middle of the season, they probably would have been sitting there at 6-6. But overall, it still would be a very big disappointment because this team went 6-7 last year, and they ended up going 6-6 again. This team would just overall be a very big disappointment. But again, it was really about the schedule this year for Florida. And again, is Billy Napier the right guy for this Florida team? We don't really know. We'll see what they look like in his third year at 2024. But it's been very up and down for Florida ever since Dan Mullen was really, fired from this Florida program. And Florida has just not looked really good in the last, 3 years. I should say, fourth year coming up for Billy Napier because, actually, it is third year now. So again, Florida, very big disappointment for them in 2023. Again, 6-7 last year, and then 5-7 in 2023. But they're not my most disappointing team in 2023. That brings me to my number one most disappointing team of the 2023 college football season, and that team is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas, the most disappointing team in 2023. This is a team that went 7-6 last year, 6-6 in the regular season. Last year was kind of very big disappointment, but this year was even more disappointing. It was terrible for Arkansas. They go 4-8 in 2023, so this kind of felt like the old Arkansas team where they used to be like one of the worst teams in the SEC. Maybe this was just a step back year for Arkansas, but I did predict this team to at least get to a bowl game, at least maybe go 7-5 because they had KJ Jefferson coming back. Now, they were competitive against, the teams in the SEC. They had that win over Florida, but, they didn't really get any more big-time wins. They were very competitive against LSU. They were very competitive, against, other teams in the SEC. But other than that, Arkansas just had a very big disappointment season. Arkansas, it kind of started with that game against BYU. That's where the kind of, the disappointment came from. They did lose a non-conference game to BYU, and the rest of the year just did not go their way. So Arkansas, they were also my first half disappointing team, and they ended up still being number one here, my disappointing team from the 2023 season. And again, just not a very good year for Arkansas. We don't know if KJ Jefferson's going to be back next year for Arkansas. We don't know what the status of Arkansas is going to look like next year. But we do know that Bobby Petrino is coming in as the offensive coordinator. I'm really interested to see how that plays out. But again, Arkansas was the most disappointing team of 2023 this year. Again, this team went 7-6, and they went 4-8 this year in 2023. I should have said 2022 they went 7-6, and then 2023 they were 4-8. So again, Arkansas, the number one most disappointing team in 2023. So those are my top 10 disappointing teams from the 2023 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about this top 10 list. Who do you think was disappointing in 2023? Give me your top 10 disappointing teams down in the comments below. And thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.